wisdom. I think some people are just stuck right where they are because they go to the wrong people for help. Mark chapter 9. Jesus shows up. He sees a crowd ensuing around His disciples, and they're all having a conversation. And Jesus walks into the scene in verse 16, and He says, "What are you discussing with them? What y'all talking about?" And the disciples are standing there, and the crowd tells Jesus what they're discussing. And a man in the crowd says, "Teacher, I brought you my son who has a mute spirit, and wherever it seizes him, it throws him down and he foams at the mouth, he gnashes his teeth, and he becomes rigid. So I spoke to your disciples." Look at what he said. "So I spoke to your disciples that they should cast it out, but they couldn't." Jesus, I talked to your disciples, but they couldn't help me. I talked to your disciples, but they couldn't help me. I imagine that conversation right now that's going on. "Hey guys, my son is convulsing with seizures. It's throwing him into the fire. It's throwing him into the water. What are we going to do about it?" The disciples had never seen anything like that. See, the problem was they didn't have the experience that they needed to help the man in that moment. They didn't understand it. They didn't know about their faith. They didn't know what they were capable of doing in that moment. But yet that man is standing there, and I can imagine the disciples saying, "Yeah, looks like you got a problem." Anybody know somebody like that in your life? You don't have to raise your hand and call their name out. "Yeah, looks like you got a problem. Well, I guess the best thing I do, I build that fire over there and I keep that boy away from water so he wouldn't get in that water and that fire." That ain't what they needed. They needed the boy to be delivered from the demon that was inside of him that was convulsing in him. And so they said, "I took him to your disciples, but they couldn't help me." And Jesus said, "Oh, faithless generation, how long shall you be with me? Or how long shall I be with you? Excuse me. How long shall I bear with you?" He said to the disciples, his buddies. "How long I got to put up with you? Ain't you got it by now? Don't you understand? We speak in faith, not in fear. Ain't you got it by now? We don't tell people what we can't do. We tell them what God can do. We don't speak to them and say, "I don't think that's possible. I'm sorry. You're just going to have to deal with that." No, we speak in faith and we say God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all anything anybody can ask or even think. And then Jesus said, "How long has this been happening?" And the guy said, "From his childhood." And then it happened. Jesus saw what had happened, and Jesus said this powerful statement to him. He said, "If you can believe, all things are possible to him who believes." If you can believe, all things are possible to him who believes. You have to take your problem to the source. You have to take it right to the source to get wisdom. If you're taking your problems anywhere other than Jesus, you're not going to find a solution there. It ain't going to happen. He said, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you." These next three words are powerful that Jesus said in Matthew chapter 11. "And learn from me." He said, "Come to me, I'll give you rest. Take my yoke take what I have available and take it on yourself and learn from me." There's no greater place to get wisdom than God Himself. And the Bible says He will give it liberally if we ask.